Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Everyone Hates Us, a podcast dedicated to the art of winning and the beautiful sport of baseball. I'm your host, Euno Lee, joined by my co-host, Daniel Grievitz, and we've also got Collin Murphy in the house. We've got a great show for you today, as Major League Baseball's postseason is in full swing. Pun not intended. Why did I write that? So the NLCS between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the New York Mets is currently tied up 1 game apiece going into Citi Field, and the New York Yankees are up 1-0 on the Cleveland Guardians heading into today's matchup at the new Yankee Stadium. But before we begin talking about the winners from this year's divisional series, it's time to talk about some teams that maybe didn't make the cut. So it's a rough time for some fan bases around the country. You know, their teams didn't score for 24 innings straight when they needed them to come through the most. Maybe their star Cy Young mortal luck pitcher gave up a grand slam. It's been a tough postseason for a lot of people, especially if you hate big market teams. If you think about, the payrolls of the remaining 4 teams. Yeah, it's just been a rough time for our baseball. It's been a rough time for it's just been a rough time for a lot of fans. But we're going to start with a fan base that didn't get into the dance entirely, due in part to some, shall we say, divisional malfeasance, some NL East collusion. On the final day, where holy hell, if you watch the second game of the Mets versus the Braves, that was a farce. That was probably one of the worst baseball games I'd ever seen in my life, at least from an offensive standpoint. I know what it's like for school to almost be out and for me to want to just party, and so I just kind of go through the motions. That was the energy that the Mets brought to the second Braves game at Truist Park after winning the first one in an instant classic, absolute stone-cold thriller. Yeah. And then they decide to basically rest their brains alongside the rest of their players in the second game and knocked out the beloved team of one Collin Murphy, frequent guest of the show, probably going to be on here a lot. So, Murph, we're going to need you to give the eulogy. What the hell happened to the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2024?
I think the obvious, thing to point at really is just the pitching was awful. It was awful all season long. I think, there were a lot of genuine excuses for it in the first half. And then everyone got healthy, and it stayed horrible. We ended the year 29th in starting pitching WAR. I think there's a reason that the day after the season ended, Brett Strom and Mike Fetters, like both the pitching coach and the bullpen coach, both got let go instantly. You really had to look at what we did in the offseason, and I think everyone really kind of thought we were on a good path there. We had Gallen and Merrill Kelly along with Fat. Those 3 got us to the World Series last year. You add in a proven guy like Jordan Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez, and you think you're starting to have something cooking here. And instead, someone shows up fat and out of shape and is now going to pick up a $25 million player option that's going to sink us for next year. So it's just tough, but it really, Jordan Montgomery gets a lot of hate because of his complaints about the humidity and at Chase Field so something he pointed out to is why he struggled there. I don't know his excuses for why he struggled on the road were then too, because it's not like he was better there. But it wasn't. Everyone else pretty much took a step back. Zach Allen was a top 5 Cy candidate. He was a middling starter. Merrill Kelly was hurt most of the year. So it's a combination of injuries and just pretty much everyone having a down year that possibly could, because the bats were electric. I don't really want to blame any of the position players kind of for what happened. We had some rough injuries there. Always going to be a little bitter about the Phillies guy taking out Ketel's leg for the 2-week stretch. That was kind of a big deal. Kind of had him ginger down the stretch. But end of the day, we had a chance versus the Padres back up on game 2 of that series that we just blew. And I actually kind of thought it was interesting watching the 3 games of that Padres series that we went 1 and 2 in. It kind of was a microcosm of the year where we lost it in all 3 phases of the game. We got shut down by the Padres AAA guy they called up because they didn't really care about the game. So offense let us down one day, starting pitching let us down one day, and then we threw the ball over the infield with one of the worst defensive performances during Merrill's start in game 1. With that said, I would also like to throw out a special shout out to screw you, Manfred. Like, everyone in the world knew that hurricane was coming through. You picked the absolute worst move in competitive sports to do. The whole reason why you try to have all the games playing the last day is to stop things like that will happen in the final game of the regular season. World Cup games with people intentionally drawing. This was obviously the planned result. I think everyone saw this as a huge liability heading into that series. And, then it reared its ugly head. I'm obviously, to you, I've been very explicitly bitter about how the Mets played in that game. I will say, shout out to Joey Lucchesi. That guy really showed out and kept it a game, despite no one else on his team really caring. Those are some of the most pathetic at-bats I think I've ever seen. It was nauseating to listen to the commentators talk about what a pitching performance from the Braves starter. It's like they just walked up and swung at 3 balls well out of the zone. It doesn't even matter what you're doing. Pete Alonso dropped a skipping ball. He put in probably the worst effort of everyone until Nimmo, I think, ran to first base slower than you did in our company barbecue chicken softball game. That was in the 9th inning. So, yes, definitely has made me full team meteor here for this NLCS. There's absolutely nothing I'm rooting for here. And looking on the other side, you have the Yankees. We're already up 1-0. This is shaping up to be a really, really rough Final Four in World Series for, I think the rest of the country.
That was epic. Thank you so much, Collin. It was funny because you know how bad Jomo was when Collin said a proven starter. We added a proven starter in Jomo, and I when you do that involuntarily, but you realize, at the beginning of the season he was a proven starter, and now he's a proven liability.
I mean, look at what the Red Sox media was saying. They were absolutely pulling the same stuff the Phillies fans were doing, bad-mouthing, the Diamondbacks fan base and everything else. How do we get possibly bullied by a franchise like the Diamondbacks? We're the Red Sox. We should be getting these guys. And, they lucked out because they also missed the playoffs, and they aren't paying that dude $25 million next year.
Yeah. Which kind of begs the question, what do you do with that guy? And, is that true? He actually complained about the humidity at Chase Field when he pitched for the Texas Rangers last year?
No. He complained about it this year.
Oh,
in
this
June.
year.
People were asking why he was struggling. What's it called? And this was after a bad start at Chase, and he talked about the humidity at Chase, a desert. Mm-hmm. And, everyone correctly pointed out, dude, you've been trash on the road too. What is this complaint? He also said he regretted signing the contract to come here. I think, in fairness, though, that was more of I should have signed something earlier in the offseason, and my representation led me astray. Mm-hmm. But for sensitive Diamondback fans, that definitely was another thing of, well, we don't want you here anymore either. Please leave.
There's twisting the knife, and then there's doing this with it. It's really...
And then Kendrick with the most, see-through, trying to make a hostile work environment, please opt out thing at the end of the year, flat out blaming Montgomery for everything. But there's no way he doesn't pick up that option. There's way too much money there. And after he just showed, no one's giving him $25 million over 4 years, much less something over 1. So I think from our perspective, he's got to rehab, and we still have holes in the rotation. I mean, the 29th ranked rotation was not 29th because of one dude, so there's a lot of other problematic steps there. I think you hope maybe a full off season he can get back, find, the level that he normally plays at. If not, he's going to be an early DFA like we did to Mad Bum last year. And I think that's pretty much how we're going to treat it. But at this point, you got to hope you can get something maybe back from him. If next year ends up going poorly for whatever reason, maybe you can hope he's a deadline trade candidate. But realistically, he probably plays as trash as he did here. We cut him. And then he goes to the Rangers and, plays well again or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it must be the lack of humidity in Texas. That is okay. Yeah, and so the D-backs obviously did have a good top of the rotation going into the season between Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen. And then, they just free agent pitching in general hasn't worked out for the D-backs. It's they kind of personify, this is why we can't have nice things. You have an owner who doesn't like spending money, and then when he does, it just blows up in his face like this. It's pretty it's like salt in the wound, because he doesn't spend money as it is, and then for you to drop, a combined 9 figures on 2 pitchers going into this season between Rodriguez and Jomo, and you have this problem where we spent all this money and they don't do anything. I think the Zach Greinke thing was the closest thing to panning out, but even a couple years into that, he was still pretty bad. He had like a historically bad season for him going into the first part of that contract, and before it evened out into like, oh yeah, by the way, Zach Greinke. So you guys, it started out early, like with Schilling and Randy Johnson, it worked out great, and then now it's like, oh my gosh, you guys just can't find a pitcher. Like between Mad Bum, these 2 bums, like.
We also traded Scherzer for Ian Kennedy, so let's not forget that one in there too. But no, and we were even paying Mad Bum a solid $14 million this year to wrestle horses or whatever he does in his off time.
Which, by the way, was a discount he took for you guys. He took a discount to join your team at the time. I still remember being like, "How did you get Mad Bum at that number?" He's projected for 9 figures, and it ended up being somehow a discount for him. So it's pretty rough. All right, moving on from the D-backs to a team that did get knocked out of the postseason during the postseason. I guess you could call that Braves farce a postseason game, but that was horrible. Legit, like that was so bad for baseball.
A shout out to Lucchesi, though. He does not deserve to get lumped in with every other Met who embarrassed themselves in that game.
Yeah, they were in a rush. They're trying to get out of there. Do I need to play it again? I don't think we need to play it again. But the San Diego Padres were knocked out by the Dodgers 3-2 in the NLDS after failing to score a run in 24 straight innings, spurring a Dodgers record-matching 33 scoreless innings streak in the postseason in the process. So they were so bad. They were record-breaking bad. I think I saw a stat that the Dodgers pitchers actually had a perfect game in there somewhere, 28 straight outs.
They did.
Between the Padres and the Mets. And so pretty nasty. It was definitely one of the most watched NLDSs in recent history. I think since 2017. The numbers were crazy. Cool fat guys. More people in Japan watch the NLDS than people in the United States. And this was one of the most watched NLDSs in the United States. Which is to say, those of you who are complaining about all this Shohei Ohtani exposure, there's a good reason for that. There's more money on the other side of the pond watching this. So, a lot more.
And there's Darvish and,
and Yamamoto. Yeah.
Yamamoto.
Like, there was a lot of Japanese star talent in that series. I mean, even you're getting that again here with the Mets with Senga.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. Star power.
Well,
that guy looks like he never picked up a baseball in his life.
I mean, a lot of these guys, they play for the national team and stuff, though. So, like, they have a higher profile there than they do here. So I don't necessarily think it's what we would consider a star isn't necessarily the same as what other places would consider a star. I mean,
yes. German the subtle anti-East Asian racism. just real subtle, just really subtle baseball colonialism.
Because I remember in Germany they called Dennis Schroeder a star NBA player. Like, the countries just in general have a different view of what they consider a star.
He does ball out on the international game. He's big for Germany.
Fellas. Kodai Senga, okay?
I mean, based on his season last year,
he finished 7th in Cy Young voting last year, okay? That's a star.
That goes football. That'll be working next year.
Yeah. Well, you were the one criticizing me calling him a star.
Yeah, I know. He had a rough first game. You know, he had a rough first 30 pitches on the NLCS. You know, I think there was a stat was he had 20 balls to 12 strikes or something, or 7 strikes or something insane. I was just
he did not have it.
This is not playable.
Let's get back to jumping on the. Let's get back to the
important part. Let's get back to the important part. So I'm going to do the nice part of this eulogy for the San Diego Padres, which is to say, they have a great team. It is probably a top 3 team in baseball going into the playoffs. They were scorching hot. They stayed scorching hot, and then they got to experience what it was like to be a Dodger fan last year in the playoffs when their bats just completely died when you needed them the most. And I really want to do the nice part of this by, first of all, it was a tough year for the team because of Peter Settler and what happened there, and Peter Settler passing away. And he is unequivocally one of the best owners in pro sports. As a Dodger fan, and our team, obviously our ownership group is great. We love Andrew. That's an awesome ownership group. But San Diego is competitive with us, and we're 3 times their market size, right? It's just crazy what they've been able to do with that franchise and the talent that they've been able to bring in. And so I think losing Peter Settler is really rough on the Padres fans because he meant a lot to that community. So they played their hearts out, in fairness. They played really hard down the stretch. The second half was really magical. It felt like everything was kind of clicking. All right, Machado's kind of breaking out of this funk, and putting up respectable numbers. Tatis looked like he was rearing back into, the form he was 2 years ago, before the suspension. When he was on the roids. Sorry, I said I was going to keep it nice. But I just want to give props to the Padres as an organization because they got a lot of this coming back next year. So Michael King looked like he was, getting into form in the playoffs, and I know he had a rough outing against us. But before us, he was up against the Braves, and he looked nails. He looked unstoppable. Dylan Cease, I don't think he blows up like that again next year. There's a lot to like about this Padres team, and they're pretty much all coming back, with the exception of, I believe, Profar and Arias are the 2 that are free agents this offseason as far as starters or everyday guys. Awesome bullpen, awesome season. They got Tanner Scott, which was such a smart. Look at all the moves they did to literally. They built this to blow up the Death Star, and they were just a meter short. So
yeah, they got Scott basically for
just
Shohei
to face Ohtani. Literally,
and it worked.
It's you have a loogie, and then you have a lefty one guy. You have a Lockie. He was really just all right, we know who you want to pitch to. And after that, you can go take a seat. You earn your check. Earned the hell out of that check this year. He was also unstoppable. Made all of us look bad, not just Shohei.
Oh yeah.
So great season. A lot of good takeaways if you're a Padres fan. This is not it. A lot of your contracts really expire after next year. So this is not. You're going to run it back. So I wouldn't rule out this team being able to make another run like this next year with some continuity and positive momentum, just thinking about the second half of this season. And that concludes the nice part of this eulogy. Dan, take it away.
Yeah, they... I had a lot of fun with this series, as I'm sure you did as well, especially as you've talked about before, the little scoreless inning streak that we posted after the second inning of Game 3. It was, like we keep saying, it was historic, and it was cathartic because of everything we talked about last week. The podcast ended, 30 minutes before Game 3 started, and so that was quite a different place we were in. And we were just coming off of Game 2 where things sort of went off the rails at Dodger Stadium for a bit, and it was a big question mark how the rest of the series was going to go. I remember we were talking during Game 3, and after that sixth inning, the 6-run second inning, I forget what inning Teoscar hit the grand slam, but the way the team sort of responded, the third inning, the way the team responded and the pitching responded after that. Like I remember we were talking after Game 3, and we were positive. We were ready for Game 4. We thought, oh yeah, the team is ready. The team's looking good, and boy were they ready. Like Game 4 was an absolute beatdown. Game 5 was a little tenser, but we were texting. You were nervous. I was I was pretty confident. Like halfway through the game, like oh yeah, we got this. Like since Kike hit that home run.
Nervous. I say, like, if I unclenched my butt, I would have soiled myself. Like, that is, I was clenching so hard. Like, I even texted Collin. I'm like, you could have drive a nail in my ass with a jackhammer right now, Collin. Like, I was just like, it was rough. Like, because it's like, oh look, Darvish looks exactly the same as he did in Game 2.
Darvish looked great, yeah.
He looks amazing. Like, we're not scoring on this guy. And guess what? This bullpen is still good.
Yeah.
Dooming is such a common experience. He goes straight to like absolute zero so fast. All of a sudden, we're basically a AAA team. Yeah.
I did fall apart. I was like, oh, this is not good. Like, guys,
Darvish was dealing, and the bullpen had owned us for the last couple games. Like, the bullpen had looked like Adam and, owned us. But like, I mean, Adam and Scott, like, the top guys had looked unhittable. Like, I give you that. But their bats looked unhittable. Unhittable, yeah.
Unhittable.
They looked completely lost and completely just defeated already. And it played out that way. Like, they literally put nothing together after the second inning of Game 3. And yeah, it was historic. Like, I think it was, most of the stats I remember are after Game 1 of the NLCS when we kept it going another game. But, like, the 3 consecutive shutouts has only happened twice in the history of the playoffs. And, like, that number of innings has only happened once in the history of the playoffs. Like, it was... yeah, an incredible run, but it definitely felt, in large part, like the cocky energy that they brought in games 2 and 3 just fully turned around on them, and they got in their own heads. Like it felt like they just sort of defeated themselves, and we just played to that and sort of remained solid and yeah, like Game 5. As close as the score looked, it did not feel that close to me. Like it just felt like the energy was different. It felt like a foregone conclusion halfway through the game. And
that doesn't change. I found some messages I had from Euno from that game.
God.
Otani's about to give us a golden sombrero. Tanner Scott owns Shohei. Mookie should lose his previous MVP.
I did not write that last one.
No,
the first 2 were real. The last one I did not. You know I love Mookie. I would never say that about him.
But yeah, just more goes to show how quickly dooming Euno can go on this.
I did call it a golden sombrero.
Yeah, that's good.
I wasn't too jazzed about that. I think he actually ended up putting a ball in play in that last one, so he avoided it, right? Did he get 4 Ks on that offer? But
I don't remember.
I don't know if he actually got the sombrero, but it's really, you know.
But yeah, like as you know, you and I have been texting after the game and like going into the NLCS, and I've definitely been basking. Like I literally have a folder of saved memes on Instagram of all trashing the Padres. It's called Padresing, and there it is, Padresing. And the content's been great, and it's been. I mean, again, this is what I was talking about last week. Like that intense dislike that the teams have for each other makes for such compelling viewing and so much fun, especially when your team is the one that comes out ahead.
You heard the Machado thing after Game 2. I don't know if you guys talked about that. Basically, he said like someone asked him about Roberts complaining about the ball thrown. He's like, oh yeah, I threw it a little bit harder than I normally do. Hard enough that they notice it, soft enough they look soft complaining about it. That was probably my favorite quote from the series. But it does feel like the Padres may have gotten a little over in their heads a little bit. Because, heading into the playoffs, Dodgers rotation, not in a good spot. You knew you were going to get a lot of your guys' bullpen. Your bullpen's good. It's not that dominant. And for the bats to just go that quiet, I think for a team with that level of firepower is, a little inexcusable for a team like the Padres. Like you You just got to do better there.
It's important to note that I'm a big believer in the baseball gods. And so you need to do right by the baseball gods. And here's the thing. The Padres did not do right by the baseball gods.
Not at
And
all.
Throwing the ball over.
And the Dodgers fans did, throwing all that stuff on the field.
I
If
will
there was
say-
a karmic retaliation, you guys should have been down in 4.
No, we paid for that in Game 3. Okay? That second inning, holy
That second
hell.
inning was-
That
yeah.
second inning was pretty rough.
Dodger
Okay,
fans
like-
did not deserve a Game 5. That last game should have been them throwing trash on the field if baseball gods existed.
I mean, if you saw, like, the proportion of dooming to, like, actual celebrating that the Dodgers fans did after Game 2, like, in going into San Diego, like, for that series, if you even looked on our subreddit, like the Dodgers subreddit, the proportion of dooming to celebrating that was happening was, like, it was 95% dooming and 5%, like, oh, like, we might win, guys. Like, it was, like, it was super negative in there. They had it absolutely coming. I thought the meltdown from the defense because of Miggy Rose, he's playing hurt and
Yep.
couldn't, like, the worst freaking ball that could possibly got to him is like the one where you have to, like, do the sight, like the lateral kind of scoot to the base. I'm like, that is the most painful thing I can imagine for somebody whose groin muscle got torn off, like, clean off. I'm like, I would not have done that, Miggy. Like, that looks very painful. And then Freddie with a bum ankle on the ground, like, trying to make a throw. Just, like, all that stuff, to me, was like, this is baseball god punishing us for throwing stuff on the field and being a jackass. Not just that. Now, I read that the bat boys and bat girls, or not the bat boys, the ball boys and ball girls over on the sides are not allowed to throw the balls back into the crowd anymore because of what happened. So we're losing, like, a bunch of souvenirs that could have gone to some kids because some drunk asshole decided to throw a ball.
It was well more than one.
Yeah. So that was kind of like my thought was just we paid our dues to the baseball gods. The Padres didn't let Bowtie into their dugout. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
because they had the whole Ken Rosenthal beef.
No.
And I was like, oh, like, hey, there's gonna be hell to pay for that.
Yeah.
Because I don't care what he wrote. Like, we have to deal with that distraction, and you get to make the excuse of, oh, he wrote something negative about us in the paper, and we don't want to talk to him. Like, if you want to do that, like, and you don't have to deal with that distraction, because it is a distraction. Like, every time you see it I cringe every time they interview Doc in the dugout during the game, because I'm like, Doc's like, you can see his eyes, like, moving through the game constantly, just like, when the fuck is this thing going to be over? Like, I need to get back to the game. And so you're telling me the Padres don't have to deal with that? Because, oh, he wrote something mean about us and we don't want to talk to him. Like, that's not fair. You're not paying dues to the baseball gods. So you had it coming. There was a lot of, like, you guys are not doing right by the baseball gods. This is not going to end well for you. Like,
It really
didn't. Holy mackerel.
Yeah, I mean, after in Game 2, after that second inning, they were acting like they had won the series. Like, they were
Exactly.
just fully ready to celebrate the end of the series in the middle of going up 2-1. And yeah, I think that was the shift. Like,
that was their World
where
Series. They won it.
I will still counter. Baseball gods don't exist. You guys should not have had a Game 5. And also the Mets, who literally just sold a game, just absolutely quit. And they're in the NLCS. This is what we have to pick between. A fan base that was throwing stuff onto the field and a team that literally quit. Didn't even try and play a competitive game of baseball. This is our final 2. You're telling me baseball gods exist? There's some karmic justice?
They sure do,
Absolutely
Collin.
not.
I
Absolutely
mean, it's not over yet, Collin. It's not over yet. We don't know how it's going to shake out in the end, right?
I
But,
know there's going to be a NL pennant winner that should have offended the baseball gods and should have been punished karmically
good
for doing
God.
so.
The gods work in mysterious ways, Colin. It's
That is true. I'm just a mere moral.
the gods. Yeah, the
I
gods
want
are
the
ruled
fan
by their
base who
whims.
hasn't thrown a ball back or thrown some crap on the field to cast the first stone. Okay? Like, I'd
So
love to see
everyone
that.
that's not you guys, Cleveland, Philly, and Atlanta. Seems like a pretty big list.
Okay, let the fan base that has not done this cast the first stone.
One exception is I'm actually pretty sure we were one of the fan bases that threw syringes at Barry Bonds. But that's a special circumstance.
That is not a special circumstance. Syringes are dangerous. Like, don't throw those on the field. What's wrong
They were
with you?
nowhere near him. It was more like just dumping them next to like
Public
right
health
field.
hazard. Then the grounds crew is gonna have to clean it up, and that's
They're only a public health hazard if you had something in them before you threw them.
we don't know what was in there. Like,
Now I feel like you're dog whistling that our fan base are drug addicts.
I mean, it is like the middle of Arizona. I don't know what you expect, but
Breaking Bad's in New Mexico. Learn your desert states.
oh my god, Collin, you know what? If I fly into Phoenix right now, I'll find a meth head in like 5 minutes. Like,
You live in LA. Just walk a couple blocks.
fair point. So that's and that should sum it up for the Padres. Obviously, it was an absolute meltdown of epic proportions. I think they deserve. Honestly, yeah, they got us. They wanted us, and they got us, and they got all of us. So that's the problem. Let's move on to the future here. And as Collin alluded to, pretty dark times for our baseball. I'm just going to refer to everybody else as our baseball. It's like, like the reasonable people, like they're on our baseball. So let's look to the future. Let's start with this. Let's start with the 3-game stretch in Queens for the Dodgers and the Mets, who start off tomorrow. Let's start with that. What do you think is going to happen here, Dan?
I feel very positive. I think Sean, like 3 of their starters have been rolling, Minaya and Severino and Quintana, but I think we match up a lot better against Severino and Quintana. I feel good about those matchups. I feel good about Buehler, apart from that one inning, which sort of got out of hand in large part because of the defense, like we talked about. I feel really good about his start. I feel really good about Yamamoto going. And I think we played it really well doing the bullpen game before the break, the 1 day off, and we also didn't use any of our high leverage guys. I think we're lined up really well, and I think the offense is still making good at bats. I think we'll do good things against their bullpen. Like, I don't think it'll play out like the Padres series where they're assemblage of flamethrowers sort of tempers expectations late in the game. I think, I'm pretty confident going into the series. I'm not sure. I think we'll take 2 out of 3.
That's fair. Murph, and I'm not saying Grievous was biased. I'm not saying Dan was biased, but from a more
what would give you that idea?
Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting series in the sense, the Dodgers' bats are far superior, but the Dodgers are very banged up. Dodgers' pen's been lights out, though. But the Mets' starting pitching does look to be in better shape. I think the Dodgers' starting pitching has been way better than expected so far in the playoffs. I'm not really a true believer that that's going to continue. I think there's been a long track record in the regular season of this not being the case, and I don't know where Flaherty pulled that game out of. But, that was a hell of an outing he had. So
you don't know where he pulled it out of, Collin?
yeah. 7 innings. Like, what's it called? Absolutely not. No runs. That was way better than that was probably his best start of the season for you guys. Is it not?
With us? Yeah.
It's up there, but it's like this is not like it wasn't crazy surprising.
Yeah.
How many Ks did he have? Didn't he have
He had 6.
6.
6? Oh, okay. I thought it was higher.
Nothing crazy.
Either way, I'm not totally sure I expect this to continue with how hot with the pitching. But
The spite.
what?
Pure spite. I don't know where Jack Flaherty pulled 7 innings and 6 Ks out of his ass. Like, that's...
Yeah. What? You think Flaherty wasn't that good this year?
He was nails this year.
Like a 3.2 ERA?
Yeah. That would have been the best on your team.
Yeah, he's at a 3.46 in 12 starts since he joined us.
Yeah, and he was the second best pitcher on his team behind a Cy Young winner.
Yeah. He was very solid.
Yeah. But, I expect the Dodgers to... I'll follow Grievett's lead. I actually think they'll take 2 or 3. I do think the bats are just a little bit too much. And the I think the Dodgers, like especially all their guys, they're just going to get healthier as like kind of this series progresses as well. I think last series we probably saw the worst that we're going to see of Freeman and Rojas. Although Freeman still looks really rough running to first.
Yeah.
But you still have three
Keeps hitting,
MVPs
though.
at the top of the lineup. Exactly, three MVPs at the top of the lineup. Teo's probably going to win a Silver Slugger. That's just way better than what the Mets have to offer. And I think at the end of the day, when you're talking about kind of, I think the 3-game stretch, you end up going to the pen a lot more. And I like the middle of your guys' pen a lot better. Banda's been pretty great for you guys, which is really annoying because he was garbage for us. You guys, Hudson, it's just it's very frustrating watching some of these guys pitch after what I had to just watch for 162 games. So I'm more faith in the Dodgers middle relief, like kind of bridging everything to the back. So.
Oh god. I mean, obviously with you guys, I do think we take 2 out of 3. But here's why I bring up Baseball God. Grimace? OMG. They got a lot of memes going over there in New York.
Yeah.
And they're adding a lot to the entertainment value of their postseason run. Ooh, hand wave time. I got a weird feeling they take 2 or 3 against us also. I think that's because, like, maybe that's where the magic happens. We snapped an interesting streak of the Mets. Did you see that? The Mets had gone undefeated in this postseason when they give up the first run.
Yes.
And we were the first team to snap that. That's a crazy stat. Like, they just pull runs out of their ass. Like, you want to talk about pulling things out of your ass, Collin? The Mets pull runs out of their ass. Like, at late innings. They're just like, I forgot. We're supposed to win. It's like, all right, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we win. I have a bad feeling this might actually happen to us. And it's because all the signs point to Dodgers are well prepared. They have reps. They're actually going into Game 3 in about as good shape as you could go into a Game 3 with a series tied. Like, pitchers are healthy. Bullpen is rested. All the high-leverage guys have not given up ABs. They haven't even given up ABs. They haven't given looks to the opposing batters. Our team looks about as healthy as it's going to look, I guess, for the rest of the season. It's kind of lining up like we're going to get shocked. So,
I mean, over a decade of playoff misadventures ringing in the head, definitely, like if that happens, it wouldn't be surprising because it does happen. But this team feels different. Like yes, the Mets have a lot of comeback magic, but you know who was also top 2 in the majors this year in comebacks? The Dodgers. Those are the top 2 teams in the majors this year in comeback wins. And yeah, like all year our bullpen was solid, but not great, as Collin alluded to. But they're pitching really well right now. Like we have 7 high leverage guys right now that are pitching on that level, and yeah, like that bullpen game that worked so well in Game 4. I think like we sort of went away from that structure in Game 2 in the NLCS, bringing in Landon Knack, and he was the one that allowed 5 runs. I liked Landon Knack a lot during the regular season, but he's the sort of pitcher that you sort of expect to get a little have less success in the postseason, where there's a lot more, I don't know, it's ratcheted up. But still, like despite that, like we are a very deep team, and it's a testament to Friedman, and we keep going back to him, like the roster construction. Like there's a lot of versatility there and a lot of pieces to sort of mix and match. Like when Rojas had to go out because of injury, we were able to slot in Tommy Edman in shortstop, and he's been really solid. And the rest of the guys in the outfield, like everything just sort of shifted, and the lineup looks really good. And I don't know, like yes, the playoff gods have shown time and time again that the playoffs are very unpredictable, but yeah, this team has a sort of resilience to it that they've shown time and again, and really exhibited in the Padres series. And I think if any team is well equipped to defeat Grimace Magic or whatever other sort of baseball tomfoolery going on in at Citi Field. It's this team. Like I think, yeah. Like I said, I feel good going into this 3-game set. But of course, we know anything can happen.
Absolutely. And the Mets have that OMG sign that to take a photo with. Like
They have two.
They have two.
Yeah.
I want us to make an LOL sign, and if we win, like we just hold up the LOL and everybody poses around it, like, like that would be spitting on the baseball gods. All right, let's bring it home. We got the New York Yankees versus Cleveland Guardians. Cleveland has not won a World Series, longest World Series drought going into the NLC or the CS rounds.
Longest
lowest
World
payroll
Series drought in baseball.
in baseball. Yeah, that's right. And lowest payroll by I think
Significant margin.
yeah, like 20. They're like 25% of the highest payroll, something like that.
Yeah, I think they're at
it's
50
pretty
million.
ugly. What are we thinking here, guys? Like, do they have a shot at all?
So I want to actually circle this back, tying it into some research I was doing for the Diamondback segment, and point out that the Guardians are actually joint 29th with the Diamondbacks for starting pitching war.
Oh wow!
The one team that we're both ahead is the Rockies, famed pitching, stellar team there. So
Pitching powerhouse.
Exactly. I think it's going to be very tough for them in general to keep this Yankees lineup down. I know the Yankee fans are so harsh on Judge. Every at bat he doesn't hit a home run in, but they still have Soto, and there's some length in that lineup. I think Garrett Cole's on the bump right now, and I think it's going to be tough to see Cleveland win this. Also, it doesn't really mean anything, but historically, it really just feels like the Yankees just really run roughshod over the AL Central in the playoffs. Typically, the Twins are the redhead stepchild that they're always beating, but it's not like the other teams have had great success versus them either. And I mean, this matchup, I think it's a pretty great one in general for the Yankees. I expect them to kind of wrap this one up kind of quickly. I'm going to say Yankees in 5. That's going to be my prediction here off the jump.
Well, going into the playoffs, when we did predictions, I predicted J-Ram to be the ALCS MVP, and I will stick to that. I believe in the Guards. I like that bullpen. I like the offense. I think they're the sort of team that can. Yeah, like the Yankees have a lot of talent, but we saw them have some really close games against the Royals. I think they're not unbeatable. I think they're. Yeah, like I think the Guards with that bullpen that they have a lot of solid arms there as well. They can keep it close. I think they have a lot of good batters with Kwan and J-Ram and Naylor, and Lane Thomas, who's been very clutch in the playoffs. I could see the Guards turn it around. I would say I'll predict Guards in 6.
I'll just say onto that though. I think having a pen-heavy approach can work in the shorter series, but in the best of 7, it starts to get really tough when they start seeing those guys 4 or 5 times through. The Royals, on the flip side, Rubber had one of the best rotations in baseball.
That's true.
And so that was something that the Yankees were having to overcome. So it is actually kind of interesting, Royals versus Guardians, where it's like two opposite sides of the pitching coin, so to speak. But I do think that it does not favor a team to have to be a bad starting pitching team when you're in a best of 7. I think that's when it really starts to kill you, and that was the fatal flaw with us in the World Series last year. The bullpen games eventually just did not. The pen got tired, and the bullpen eventually failed us.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think a guy like Matthew Boyd, who only came back for a couple starts at the end of the year, but has been pretty good, gives them a better outlook than that 29th rating over the course of the regular season. I think they have a couple, between him and Bybee, I think they have a couple decent starters. I think Cobb put some good games together for them when he came back from injury late in the year as well. I think they have a better rotation than that 29th rating would suggest now at this point with the guys that they have healthy. But yeah, that's a good point, and that's something that they've been saying a lot in reference to the Dodgers' approach as well, because we also have a very bullpen heavy approach going in. But But I mean, those guys in the Guardians pen are rock solid. Like Clase gave up that home run in game 1 or 2 to lose the game, but apart from that, they've been very solid, and I think that can be a big evener of games. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Yankees are the Yankees, and they have 2 of the 4 best players in baseball this year, at least on the offensive side of the ball, and they. I mean, it'd be very easy to see them in the playoffs, but I like this Guards team a lot. I think they can surprise some people.
So speaking to this kind of starting pitching, and I wanted to make sure we got a mention in for this guy. The best starting pitcher remaining in both championship series, in my opinion, pitched yesterday. Sean Manaea.
Oh, he's been lights out.
Collin, have you heard about this? He basically mimicked Chris Sale's delivery and arm slot and started working out and doing this kind of sidearm sweeping motion, and it's been working out for him. And Sean Manaea has basically turned his entire career trajectory around with just this half season of changing his arm slot. And I'm of the opinion he's the best starting pitcher remaining. Like, he looked unhittable yesterday. Like, literally the only people who really got on base were, I think, towards the end of his start where he was starting to lose control. He gave up 2 walks to lead off an inning. Mm-hmm. But before that, it was just like, what the hell? Like, how do you hit this? Like, what is he doing? And
oh yeah, he looked really good.
He looked incredible. So I would argue he's the best one. I'm sorry?
The side by side with Sale is very like he really copied him. Like he
looks like him.
Exactly the same.
He's Chris Sale.
Yeah, where's the plagiarism accusations?
I mean, yeah, he looked good. But that's part of what I was saying, that I feel good going forward with the 3 games because we've gotten past him. Like I think we match up a lot better against Severino and Quintana.
It was a punt game in a way. Yeah. So I have a feeling Doc kind of knew. Yeah. And that's why he was like, just leave Knack in, because like Manaea looks freaking unhittable right now. And so, yeah, as a former Sean Manaea fantasy owner over here who has suffered the wrath of his poor outings, it's really nice to see.
Career ERA against the Dodgers going into the game was like 7.
Yeah.
7 something.
It was something hilarious. And it should have been a free win.
Yeah, so many of the guys going up, like their career, like Will Smith was like 9 for 18 against him or something. Like it was.
They kept showing his previous splits against him. Like I was like, it's not the same guy, dude.
Yeah.
We got like.
What was Chris Sale's ERA versus you guys?
Yeah, probably something with a 0 in it. Like, oh my gosh, dude. Like, it's crazy. I was just like, bro, like. He's not the same guy. And then they keep showing like the previous splits, like, oh yeah, we rock this guy. I'm like, no, we don't. Okay. Like, he is really good. So shout out to Sean Manaea. Go back like babies and pacifiers. He looked incredible yesterday, and condolences to his auntie who passed away recently. I heard most of his family was at that funeral and therefore couldn't be at the game. Just reviving his career. I think it's one of the coolest things is like, mid-season, you're like, hey, what if I just start throwing like this? And then it's like, oh, that's great. Like, you probably just made yourself like $80 million. Like, so, yeah, big shout out Sean Manaea. Even though you beat us and you just beat the piss out of us, you looked amazing. So I like a good turnaround story like that, and it's cool to see that. So, and please don't pitch again this series.
It was very encouraging to see the at-bats we got against him at the end of his, like, because in the end his line wasn't that, like, it wasn't what Darvish did against us in game 5. Like, it was two earns in like 5 and change innings. Like, it was good, but not he looked dominant out there at the start, but we sort of were able to fight and drive up his pitch count and sort of compel Mendoza to take him out, and that was very encouraging too. Even in the losses, like, there's like the only game that I felt like demoralized for the Dodgers in the playoffs so far was game 2, just because of the mess that was. But the other 2 losses that we've had, like, there was a lot of encouraging signs, including against Manaea, like, especially because of how well he's been pitching. Yeah, no, down the stretch you could tell he was starting to get a little tired, and he kind of started to lose control a little bit.
But I felt it was kind of unfair that some of those runs were charged to him. He left with the bases juiced, and then like, was it Edman who hit like a screamer to the second directly to Pete Alonso, I believe it was. I don't know if it was Alonso or Iglesias, but it just like kind of like died into the green part of the field, and I was like, wow, nice guys, real nice. Like this is how a rally starts.
I think the worst one I saw was it who was it in game 3 for you guys versus the Padres? Was that Buehler?
Buehler, yeah.
Yeah, Buehler.
Yeah, where he got 7 outs in the inning and got charged for 5.
It was like, it's Schrodinger's inning. Like, this should be over. But we have 0 outs. We have 4 outs and 0 outs at the same time right now.
That's not even counting the one, like, the grounder that, like, you just couldn't do anything with because it was just too well placed, but didn't leave the infield. And I was just like, man, like, this guy's produced, like, 3 double play balls and, like, a weak grounder that didn't leave the infield and has gotten 0 outs out of it.
That's why that inning felt so much like the baseball gods' retribution for the previous game. Like that's
what I'm saying.
It was just a lot. Like everything was going wrong. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong in the same.
But
inning.
no, and they gave all the runs to Buehler, and I was like, that is just dirty.
Yeah. They shouldn't have all been earned.
That was a lot of unearned runs. Like the Tatis home run, even that, I was like, maybe don't charge that to him, guys. Like that is, this inning should have been over like an hour ago. Like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. But that's what I'm saying, Murph. We ended up losing that game, and so did we not pay our dues to the baseball gods? You know, I think it's important to know, like, we keep a ledger too. You know, I'm sure when we all die, and you know, there's some big dude in the sky with a flowing beard who's gonna bring up his big old tablet and be like, you know, remember that time you went to the strip club and you know, did that, and you know, you did a whole giant line of blow in the bathroom and blah blah blah. You know, like not that any of this actually happened.
I famously did not ever go with you to that. I always, I don't know if you do this, DG, but like I would always blame my wife, now wife, girlfriend at the time, and said that she wouldn't want me to go. And then she eventually heard that I was doing that, and she's like, I never said that. And I was like, come on here. Like,
I literally brought it up to her, and she looked at me like she had no idea what I was talking about. I was like,
I never told everyone I was scapegoating her for that decision.
He was 100% scapegoating her because I know what the real reason why Collin didn't go is because he didn't want to spend money on stupid shit, which is like, you know, typical Murph. You know, like he doesn't like doing that. Yeah, no, it was just like, to my point, they're keeping a ledger, Collin. All right, and we paid our dues. All right, we throw some crap on the field. All right, sure, whatever. Okay, but the next game, like. And in fairness, our fans are obviously not aware of how the baseball gods operate. And so they were like, what is going on? Like, why do we start Buehler? He's so garbage. Why is Miguel Rojas in? Like, isn't he hurt? And I'm just like, guys, baseball gods, okay? Like, we owe some runs, okay? Like, we owe a lot of runs, all right? And we gave them all up in that inning. Like, it wasn't enough to win the damn game, okay? Like,
I do like what you guys did with Buehler because I was saying this even from the jump. I don't know if it was with you, you know, another Dodger fan I was talking to, but basically you guys were never going to go anywhere in this postseason without Buehler, like, figuring his stuff out. Yeah. And so, like, for everyone that was complaining, oh, he's such a miserable regular season, yada, 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 it's like, well, no, like, you have to let him pitch through it because there's not enough arms to actually get you to where you want to go without him being in there. And so, I mean, I think that was, like, very well done, I think, from the front office, Roberts, you know, to keep backing their guy, and you know, so far it's paid off. We'll see, you know, if it does in Game 3.
And he's been so solid in his career in the playoffs. Like he's a big game pitcher, and that sort of mentality, even if the results haven't been there in the regular season, that sort of mental fortitude, that's huge in the playoffs. Like if you've done it consistently before, like that. Like even if you look at his like crooked number in the ERA for going into the playoffs, like, and despite the debacle that was the second inning, you see how he responded, and he came back out and threw a few more very effective innings, and that's what I keep going back to. Like that's the sort of feel that the team has. Like it's that sort of resilience, and he set the tone in Game 3, and sort of like. The first 3 of those 24 consecutive innings to end the series were Buehler. He came back and shut him down.
Yeah, and it felt like kind of the late season was more of a build-up for him. It was like, because he was just returning from Tommy John, like finally, his second Tommy John. And it was like, he was talking about him. He was hard on himself during the season too. He was like, because somebody asked him about free agency, and he's like, free agency is for when you got like a 2.5 ERA. Like I don't got that right now. And I was like,
oh, he didn't blame the humidity at Dodger Stadium?
No, man, because he's a winner.
Just wondering.
And he's not getting paid $25 million. He's getting paid like $5 million. So, but yeah, he's he was pretty hard on himself, and I was like, I'm okay with Walker saying that, because Walker's the type to like be real with himself, but at the same time know like I don't give a shit. Like I gotta build myself up for the postseason, and he certainly did that. And I'm just not gonna blame that second inning against the Padres on anybody. I think it's asinine. Like literally, it was everything horrible that could have happened. Like the worst possible double play ball went to Miguel Rojas. He had a split second to make the decision. Am I gonna weakly sidle over to second base and try to make this throw, or am I gonna just toss it to Kike? The fact that he had to apologize after the game for not doing that kills me. It hurts my soul, because I think a baseball player is a ball player. Whether you got a torn groin or a fucking torn ACL or whatever, you're still a ball player, and your instincts are why we pay you. Yeah. And the fact that he has to apologize after the game because some fans don't know how fucking baseball works infuriates me. I don't think he needs to apologize for shit. He played his heart out. Literally, you don't send him out there with the thought that well, Miggy, you're injured, so if you fuck this up, it's all gonna be on you. Just hitting into a triple play, when the Padres clinched, and everybody people are blaming Miguel Rojas for hitting into a triple play. That's something a fucking ball player tries to do. Sorry for hitting an absolute laser over to Manny Machado. That's
the thing. Triple plays are always well-hit balls. Yeah. Just unlucky where you put them. Those aren't. Yeah, I don't know. You laced it. That's the only reason you were able to get tripled up.
It just shocks me that people are so reactionary to outcomes and don't really understand what goes into a baseball. And they're like, why aren't you bunting in that situation? I'm like, they were in a wheel alignment. They were waiting for him to bunt. What are you talking about? No, you swing at that, okay? Because if you get it even a little bit past the shortstop, it's free runs. We're just cashing runs. So I was just like, what are you talking about? So there's a lot of lack of baseball knowledge driving the hate for that inning. But really, before we even get to that, what we should be blaming is the baseball gods and that dumbass who threw shit on the field. That guy is why that happened.
There were multiple.
It's karmic. It's all paid. I want to make this clear. It's all paid.
There were 3 to 4 balls that were on the field. You just keep saying one dumbass. There were multiple.
That one dumbass opened the floodgates. We know this. Okay,
the one guy instigated.
Yeah, the instigating asshole
is the
party. It always takes one guy to embolden the chicken shits in the crowd. Who are going to be oh well, he did it, so I'm gonna do it too. No, it's that one asshole. If he just kept his fucking hands in his pockets, we'd be fine. But no, he had to do everything the hard way. So baseball gods, they exist, Collin. We paid our dues. All right. Okay.
Hey, I told you, I'm Team Meteor. That's what you're gonna get out of me for a Dodgers series.
You really need to dehumidify Chase Field, I think. I think it's the humidity of the hottest desert in North America. That's it's so humid. You can't handle all this moisture. This atmospheric moisture is making me hold the ball funny.
Every time I'm out there, and I always think, thank God for the humidity around me. I don't even need to have water. My skin, absorbs it.
Oh, God. All right. On to some football news. Today was actually a big day in the NFL. 2 wide receivers on the move, some big ones. We got Amari Cooper going to the Buffalo Bills, and we've got Devontae Adams reconjoining with his Siamese twin, Aaron Rodgers, on the Jets. And Jets obviously coming off in a pretty embarrassing loss over the weekend. This is the 2 teams, actually. The Jets and the Bills, right? So the Bills decided they didn't need a premium upgrade at wide receiver. They just needed a Amari Cooper size upgrade. Whereas the Jets went out and got probably one of the best wide receivers of the past 5 years. Murph, what's your take here? Like, is this going to turn the Jets season around?
So I actually have a quick, clarification. I actually think the Delta upgrade that both teams did is pretty close because one is seemingly upgrading Mike Williams to Devontae Adams, and the other is moving from Marquez Valdes-Scantling to Amari Cooper. And that's actually a pretty, that looks a little bit more comparable when you do it like that. Nothing against MVS, but
nothing against MVS, but I compare very unfavorably to Mike Williams.
The quarterbacks he has played for in his NFL career is just, oh my. He's got Rodgers, Mahomes, Josh Allen. That guy has been truly blessed. But as for, if we're talking about just the Jets, so I think that's kind of the big one here, probably the most relevant, because I think the Bills are going to make the playoffs with or without them making that move. But the Jets, I think this is the move they kind of had to make. There's only so much they can do. The line needed to play better. It played better on Monday. They finally were opening up some holes. Like, that was the best Breece Hall's looked all season. I think their kicker had some issues there in the second half. So that was kind of a problem. But I think also what you can really see is over the course of the game, teams are starting to get a little bit better with a lot of the quick hitters. And Rodgers is forcing them to Lazard. When he's forcing them to Devontae Adams, I think the offense is going to look a lot better. And, I think the other good thing if you're a Jets fan is that was the best game Rodgers and Wilson looked together. And Garrett Wilson's had some issues getting on the same page, getting his feet down, even though that was awkward as hell with the touchdown. He somehow, was able to actually get his feet correct on that one. But that was the best they had looked, I think, so far this year. Although probably not a great sign for them that the defense looked like the worst it did right after firing their defensive-minded head coach. In theory, that really shouldn't have been a huge difference because Ulbrich was already calling the defensive plays. So, really there shouldn't be a huge difference on the defensive side. But, Salah is obviously Salah. Like, he's a great defensive guy through and through. But I think at this point in the season, Mike Williams looked a lot to me like Sammy Watkins did that last year Rodgers was in Green Bay, where you used to have this vet receiver that just runs horrible routes and just can't get on the same page. You look at the pick that ended the game. Mike Williams is 7 yards away from where he was supposed to be. Like that is just utterly ridiculous, and it's the reason he slipped. And then he slipped as well. Yeah. So just awful again from him. Like I said, I think the best comp really is old Sammy Watkins. Saw Rodgers last year, and similar to Sammy Watkins, Mike Williams does get shown the door as Rodgers, pulling some GM moves here. I think it's also great to see Devontae Adams was able to make an appearance on the McAfee show minutes after the trade was announced. So he was already in New Jersey because he was in Rodgers' house when that happened, and it seems like the hamstring that had him out the last 2 weeks is fully healed. So amazing the timing on that. So it looks like Adams has a good shot of being active this Sunday. So that catastrophic hamstring injury seems to be behind him, and it looks like he's going to be fully healthy for the Jets. Total coincidence, I'm sure. As for the Bills, I'll just do a quick write-up on that. Like, they need to do something at the receiver position because Malik Collins, that's your number one. Yeah. Also, I feel good for Amari Cooper. I would never want to sentence someone to playing with this current version of Deshaun Watson. I was listening to another podcast, Pardon My Take, and one of my favorite things they said about Deshaun Watson, and this was after Game 2 of this year, is he's so bad at football right now, you can argue he's a better human being than he is a person. And I think that sums up how he's playing pretty well.
Wow. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say something similar to what Collin said. I think the Amari Cooper acquisition is going to be big for Buffalo. Like they've been, as a season-long suffering Dalton Kincaid owner in fantasy, I can speak to the how ineffective that passing attack has been. They have Khalil Shakir, who's played pretty okay in a few games, and I think this Cooper acquisition will help open him up a bit as well, and Kincaid. And I think having those three legitimate, Shakir's been hurt for two games, I think. So I think once he gets back and they'll have those three quality receiving options.
He was back on Monday.
Okay. Oh yeah, he had two catches. I saw that.
Yeah, 2 catches.
Yeah, I think this Cooper acquisition will be really big for Buffalo, and at the same time, I think the Jets obviously Rodgers and Adams have a rapport from years playing together, and they sort of Adams will help. Rodgers loves doing his whatever, and Adams is on the same page with him with that on the field. So I think that'll work because it always has. But I think that team has some serious issues, and with that start, I don't think they'll make the playoffs even with this acquisition.
All right. Well, speaking of teams that will not make the playoffs for being bad, to teams that have a shot at not making the playoffs even though they're freaking good, the NFC North might be the craziest division I have ever seen. There are two teams at 4-2 tied between the Pack and the Bears. Then you've got the Lions at 4-1. And then the Minnesota Vikings, undefeated at 5-0. Collin. Actually, let's start with Dan. Dan, which of these three division rivals are the scariest? We got the Vikings and the Lions kicking off this Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific, which I think should be a Sunday night game because those are two good-ass teams and would be very good football, which is something I haven't been able to see as an Eagles fan for quite some time. So who's the boogeyman of this division? Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, all the teams look good, but I think by the season's end, it'll come down to the Packers and the Lions, like last year. I think the Vikings look good, but they've looked shaky on offense the last. I think it was against the Jets in London. Is the one I was watching. They looked shaky there. They were off this last week. Their defense has been great so far under Brian Flores, but I think there's some regression there. I think that 5-0 is definitely a bit inflated, and similar with the Bears. I think they've had a good start, and Caleb Williams has started to look a little better. But I think, I think they'll fall back to earth a little bit, between the Packers and the Lions, I think that'll whenever we play will help me sort of sort through those, but I think either team could beat the other team in a given matchup. They're both high-level teams, which they showed in the playoffs last year. I think we both of those teams have improved on those versions, and I think it'll come down to one of those two. But of course, the Packers will come out on top in the end.
Murph, who's the boogeyman of the NFC North?
Well, I'm going to first off talk about who's not, and that is the absolute frauds that are the Bears, who have they're 4-2, but their 4 wins are over teams with a combined 4 wins. They lost to the Anthony Richardson Jags. They only beat the Titans because Will Levis literally sold the fourth quarter. I mean, this is just not a very impressive 4-win stretch. You can only play who you have in front of you. Also throw in that Rams win, which is their best one, was coming off that week where everybody died versus the Niners. This is about as fortuitous of a stretch as you could have had. I think it's been great, and Caleb Williams is at least beating at least some of the earlier allegations from that awful first couple games he had. And I think if he's able to kind of make the transition through this soft part of the schedule, this should warm up as the schedule's getting tougher as he goes through the year. And so I think, they could have baked in some wins that they didn't deserve. But I think when we're coming to talk about the top of this division, the Bears are not going to be relevant at that point. There's going to have to be some injuries at some very key positions on all 3 teams, I think, for that to occur. So similar to Dan, though, the Vikings defense look great, but I think we've started to see Darnold come back to earth the last 2 weeks. We've seen Darnold do this before. With the Panthers even. Remember after he left the Jets, he had that first several weeks. Everyone was like, the Jets are the problem. The Jets are the problem. Darnold finally unleashed, and then he got benched later in the year for PJ Walker or something. And so I think Darnold's one of those guys that you can build an off season. You can get him kind of going, and then defenses start keying in on his tendencies, and all of a sudden he turns into a pumpkin. And I think clock's hitting midnight pretty quickly for him. So there's that. The Lions, they're a complete team. I'm not the biggest Goff lover. I think I've been clear on that, but I think he runs the Ben Johnson offense well. I think they're schemed very well, and their skill position players are as deep as anyone. Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, Gibbs, Montgomery, Laporta. They did lose Aiden Hutchinson, which is a huge, huge loss for their defense. But still, that's not a team I'd be counting out too easily. I like the way Love's looked the past couple weeks. He still has one or two throws where you're like, what are you doing? that pick six versus the Rams, just awful. But this is the best the defense has looked in a while. It's so nice to watch the defense actually try to get stops rather than hope the other team commits a penalty and then hope we can get a stop. It feels like we can actually force something a little bit here, which is really nice.
McKinney's been huge.
Yeah. McKinney, I think I'm very close to saying he's the best safety we've had since Nick Collins. Amos had that 1 or 2 years with us, so I'm holding back. But McKinney's just been great. I love the new DC. And yeah, Love in the offense has just looked so great the last couple weeks. It just really feels that we can do anything except for make a field goal. And it seems like we just fired Narveson and we signed McManus minutes ago. So we'll see how that comes. I know Jags fans call him McAnus, so I don't really have the highest of hopes. But Narveson was pretty horrible. So. So, we'll see how it goes. Also on kicking news, the Niners must be truly desperate because I heard that they just brought in Anders Carlson, who lost the he lost a 2-person kicking competition to a guy that wasn't even in the building. So that's how bad our kicking has been this year. We had Anderson, we brought in Greg Joseph, had them go head to head, fired them both, brought in Narveson, who lost the kicking job to the Titans. And then we fired Narveson to bring in McManus, who lost the kicking job already. So it's not really been a great house that we brought in. And, we keep flipping over 16s here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like both of you guys think the Packers are in the mix with the Lions for being the boogeyman's of the division, despite the Vikings being undefeated. Quick fact check. Beat the Niners. Have beaten some playoff teams from last season in the Niners, the Texans. So, yeah, there's definitely a little bit of, I'm sensing a little bit of Green Bay bias here. You guys just hating on the Vikings for no damn reason. Pretty phenomenal.
Defenses typically are ahead of offenses in the early part of the season, and Flores' defenses have been very in front of all the offenses. And I think we're going to start to see some offenses start to pick up what he's doing here. He's been a little reckless with some of these house blitzes. I don't think he's going to go with that in the second half. So it's not necessarily disrespect to that. It's certainly disrespect to Darnold, who I call the pumpkin. And I expect him to return to one shortly.
I think Darnold benefits from having Jefferson, who's always open. But yeah, I think he'll definitely come back to earth in the second half.
All right. Well, on that note, let's wrap it up here today, guys. Anybody, we actually had some viewers today, which is kind of crazy on the live stream. So, it's something we're going to continue to work on and kind of fine tune. But Collin, thank you always for joining us. We were always happy to have you here. We really need to figure out your microphone situation. Dan, thank you so much for always being prepared and having an amazing backdrop and looking great. I'm Euno Lee, joined by Dan Grievitz and Collin Murphy. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll hope to see you next week, same time. All right?
Sounds good. All right.
Dodgers.
Go Meteor.